I guess I can start sharing what I do, I guess, while we are waiting for our moderator. So again, my name is Bongai Mloi, and I am original from Zimbabwe, but I live in Pennsylvania. I've lived here for more than 30 years. And I have a nonprofit organization called American and African Youth Leadership Foundation slash End Child Marriages. If you look on my background there, I teach here in the United States. I teach etiquette, social graces, and leadership skills to young girls and boys as well. So we teach them, we give them social skills so that they can be successful when they grow up. But in Zimbabwe, where I'm from, my main job is, although I also teach etiquette and social graces to the girls, but I also help them stay in school by giving them scholarships so they can stay in school. Because in this one particular community in Zimbabwe, the parents there, they still believe in the cultural norms that was years and years ago, where they think that the girl, her job is to, as soon as she hits puberty, she needs to get married and bear children. That's her job. But the boys, they can remain in school. So we can see the gender bias is right there. So these girls, they get married off to much older men when they are only 12, 13, or 14. So my organization, we come in, we take these girls and we put them in school. We pay for everything, for school fees, school supplies, school uniforms, everything that she needs to stay in school. So that's what our organization does. And I've been doing this since 2010. And since 2010, I have helped so many girls stay in school. We now have about 70 girls that are in school. And I look for sponsors. We, do fundraising events so that we can get the money to give scholarships to these girls. However, we still have a long waiting list for other girls that are still not in school yet, and they are at higher risk of getting married off. So what we do is every time we get a new sponsor, we go to our waiting list and see who is at the most risk, who is at the most risk. And then we take that girl, we put her in school, we pay for her fees, we put her in school. So, that's how, and I work with one teacher there. She lives in the community, she lives in the area, so she knows all these girls. That's how she's able to identify them. And I've been working with her for, since 2010. And, they all know her. Some girls will come and say, hey, her name is Rashai. My father or whoever the relative that's taking care of the girl might be, telling her that now she needs to get married. So she will go to this teacher and tell her that, this is what's going on in the home. And we take over, we take the girl, we give her scholarships, and then she stays in school. I don't know if I should wait because I do have a very short clip that I want to share with everyone, but I can stop at this point so I can also hear what other people are doing. Hopefully, by then our moderator will be here to lead us on how we can go ahead with our discussion.
Yep, and that's awesome. Mindy, let's hear from you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Bongai. And
Thank you.
Claudia, it's great to be on a panel with both of you. So my name is Mendy Marsh. I'm the executive director and co-founder of Voice. I see sort of working on violence against women and girls and gender equality as my life's project. I feel like it's an honor and a privilege to get to work on an issue that affected me deeply as a young girl, as it has so many other women and girls around the world. And I work mostly in conflict and crisis situations. So Bongai, I've been to Zimbabwe a few times. I have tended to work most of my career in conflict and crisis affected settings because it often is a time where social norms are really changing more rapidly, and women and girls they often are pushed to do new things outside of the home that become more recognized. Often the multiple burdens that they carry are sometimes invisible, right? And sometimes in a conflict or a crisis settings, men and other community members start recognizing the value that women and girls have and how much they contribute to their families and their communities. And so the organization that I run is basically aiming to disrupt the humanitarian system, the aid industry, and center it on what women and girls know they need. I think we've seen from COVID that women and girls are often the front lines of crisis response, and we need to get them into the halls of power and help them be seen for their leadership. And we need, all people, including fathers, to step in and play the role that they can play to, help us on the path towards eliminating violence against women and girls. So I'm excited to dig into this topic. I'll hand it over to Sadia now.
Well, thank you, Mindy and Bongai. It's a pleasure to be on the stage with both of you. And I'm Sadia White. I am the CEO and founder of Eyes Wide Open, Empowering People Globally, which is also an extension of Generational Survivors, which is my global movement. And what we aim to establish is a core family structure with the core unit, the father, the mother, the children. Oftentimes we forget, we dwell on our mothers, we dwell on our daughters. What about our males as well? So we want the whole family involved. And my vision was to definitely empower on a global scale with having the resources, having those workshops for those parents who live in those communities that don't have the necessary resources, low income housing areas, those people who don't have internet. We learned through the pandemic that there were a whole branch of people out there that were lacking resources such as the internet, such as trying to get aid. How do they get that? How do they find those resources? So what we did was we went out and we hit some of those communities. We raised we had different fundraisers for our local domestic violence shelters for our battered women and children, as well as our men. We tried to give back as much as we could during that crisis. And we aim to establish a voice for those voiceless men, women, and children who have been products of sexual deviation, sexual assault, child molestation. I was a product of sexual molestation as a child. And that's something that I really feel like needs to be touched on, because a lot of times we were taught that what goes on in your home stays in your home. Well, no more. I don't relish that idea. I speak out against it as much as possible. I am a proud voice of the community of women, men, children who have been through that situation. I am a survivor of that. So I feel so strongly and passionate about definitely spreading the word and getting judicial laws in place that will protect the child, growing up as an adult and getting them the resources they need in a mental capacity, because I did not have that access as a child. No one really advocated for me. So we need to advocate for our children. We need to advocate for those who don't have the voice, and continue to just fight that good fight with justice, changing laws, the statutes of limitations. There should not be a statute of limitations for a child who was molested, who was raped, for anyone in a sexual violence crime. I really believe that we need to lift the statute of limitations of that. My abuser was never brought to justice. The statute of limitations is over for me, but it should not have to be for those coming after me. And that's one of my personal fights as the founder and visionary for Generational Survivors. So yes, I'm excited to be here, ladies.
Wow, that is so awesome. As I'm listening to both of you, I'm just so fascinated about how our work is so intertwined. And although we are different places and different entities, it's just like the same. Mandy, you talk about the pandemic and how people get so vulnerable. And I thought about, when you were saying that, I thought about the girls that I work with. during the pandemic, they were at the highest risk of getting married off. It was just awful. And then I also listened to what you were saying, Sodia, about the experience that you had as a child, the sexual molestation, and that's kind of something that made you do what you are doing now, so that you can bring that platform to other girls that might be in your situation. So it's also, for me, as a child, I witnessed child marriages in my family. I wasn't married off, but my grandfather, he was 75 at the time, and he married a 12-year-old girl that was married off to him by her father. Speaking about Father's Day, can you imagine? The father is supposed to be somebody that's the person who's supposed to protect you, but he's the one who is violating you at the most violation, ways that you can think of. He's marrying off his daughter at age 12. But again, I'm not judging these fathers that are doing this. All they're doing is also, they think they're doing the norm, because this has been done for years and years and years before. Although the country is also changing the rules and the laws, but there are still some communities that are still practicing these beliefs that a girl is supposed to be married off. So in their minds, they are doing something they think is normal for them. So it's very, for my organization and me personally, especially witnessing this girl coming to my grandfather. She was about the same age as we were. And I could watch her and see her crying every time. Her hopes were to become a nurse when she grows up, but that didn't happen. She ended up being married off to my grandfather, who was like almost at the end of his life. But anyway, the good part was she ran away 2 years later, and she told us that she wanted to run away and to promise that we won't tell our grandfather that she planned to run away, which we did keep our promise. And she ended up running away. But up to this day, I keep thinking about it. That's really what made me do what I'm doing now, to rescue these girls. Like, what happened to her? Where did she go? Because she didn't tell us where she was going. So she ran away, but we don't know where she went. I don't know if she was able to become a nurse that she wanted to become. Did she go back home and still got married off again? That's the question that I always will have on my mind. But what makes me feel better is that although this girl, wherever she went, whatever happened to her after she ran away, at least I'm helping these other girls trying to get away from the situation. But the work is still, it's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And the good thing is I'm not the only one who is doing that. Is also other people that are, from other African countries as well, that are trying to make a difference and trying to make a change to these girls. And especially, today, as we are talking about Father's Day, I just think about the father's role, really, which is our topic, the father's role. You're supposed to really take care of your daughter or your grandkids, to make sure that, you do your best to protect them. But marrying them off to a guy who is 60, the girl is 12, 13, and marrying her off to a 60-year-old guy, that's, we still have a lot of work to do to educate these men, to make sure they understand.
We absolutely do. Mindy, that is so true and correct. And I've been studying some of the cases in Africa in reference to that, especially with generational survivors. I had a young lady that is a generational survivor, and she's from Africa, and she spoke of the same thing that you were speaking of in reference to the men and how they treat the woman there, as far as the daughters marrying them off. So I pose this question, and I'm going to pose this question to Mindy Bongai, if you don't mind. What do you think the father's role is as far as it comes to sexual and gender-based violence? Because that's huge what Bongai is talking about in reference to the fathers and how they should be nurturing to their children instead of marrying their daughters off to these older men in the village.
Right. Yeah, no, totally. Thanks for that question. I mean, I think that this is the heart of it. men must model behavior that their sons can follow, right? Young boys often look to their fathers for cues. It's not enough to merely not be violent towards women and girls in the household or otherwise. Instead, fathers really need to go beyond basically displaying to young boys what ideal behavior and allyship looks like, right? They have to do things that are going to help boys reject harmful gender norms, patriarchal concepts, right? That they're exposed to often inside the household and outside the household. Dads in particular need to teach boys that the world doesn't owe them anything due to their sex. I think this is a big, big thing.
Oh, yeah.
And we have to really, fathers have to recognize that once the boys walk out of their home, if they're modeling good behavior inside the home for their children, they're going to be exposed to all kinds of negative behaviors, right? Because they're going to be surrounded by the patriarchy. We really need to get fathers to acknowledge the role of women as going much way beyond being mothers, sisters, daughters, or wives, right? We really need to get men to help their sons understand that women are independent individuals with agency and purpose. I think, it has to start super young, right? We really have to work on helping boys see that girls can do everything that they can do, but they carry a huge burden, right? In addition to being able to do everything that boys can do, right? That there are barriers that girls face at every obstacle, at every kind of corner that they need to understand, right? And so I just think we have to really think that through, right? And think about how, Bongai, you're talking about, in a sense, the extreme, right? Mm-hmm. Young girls being exposed to forced marriage, which honestly is sexual assault over and over. Mm-hmm. And we have to do that. We have to make sure that we're doing the things that might seem small in terms of modeling positive behavior for young boys, for children. Girls need to understand that their mothers have the same, that they're if they are in a household with two parents, including a cis hetero male father, right? They need to see that man listening to, uplifting her knowledge and expertise, and so that the children in that household actually see that their mother's opinion, voice, agency matters as much, right? And they need, men need to acknowledge that they have to share the burden, right? They have to share the burden in the household, that the role of taking care of children is everyone, that's both their responsibilities. It's not just for the woman to do these things. It's not in that, because that, in a sense, that undervalues that role. So I think those small things that might seem small are huge, right? Because they add up into this reality that will, change the way a young boy engages in their future life, right?
Absolutely.
I really the core structure when it comes to the father's role, I believe it starts young, like you were saying, Mindy. It starts at a young age. How are we raising up our young men to be our young boys? Are we teaching them emotional vulnerability is okay? Instead of teaching them that, you have to present all this masculinity, you have to be strong in every area, stop crying, be a man. Well, they're not men, they're boys. So you're teaching a young boy, you're telling this young boy that he needs to stand in a man's gap. He does not know how to be a man because he was not taught that as of yet. We have to raise them into men. So what are we teaching them as our young men? Because it starts in the home. The foundation is in the home. That's why we in Eyes Wide Open deal with the family structure, because it starts there. It starts in the home, teaching our children, teaching our young men, our young boys, how to become young men in society. And let's stop labeling, putting a definition on how they should be as young boys. Like, young boys shouldn't, you're a boy, you don't wash dishes, you don't clean the bathroom. That's a woman's job, that's a girl's job. That is not the case. I have a couple of sons. We have 7 children between us. And I have taught my young males at a young age that there is nothing in this house that you cannot and will not do. You will do everything that I do, because you may not grow up with a wife. You may not get married. So how are you going to take care of yourself, right? Why do we always depend on the woman to structure the home? The man needs to know how to structure the home as well. I recently watched a Netflix movie called Fatherhood with Kevin Hart. And it showed just the essence of what a father should be, right? And it was a piece and a part in the movie where the wife had died. He had to now take care of the newborn child. He went back to work, and the boss said to him, "Well, you don't have the emotional. You don't have what it takes to be emotionally connected to this child. You don't have the patience." Is that what we're teaching our young men, that they're not patient enough? Are we teaching them? Are we teaching them how to become toxic? Are we showing them what toxic masculinity is? Is this something taught? I believe it is. I believe toxic masculinity is taught, that we as a society have put labels on our young boys and have taught them that they don't have, you shouldn't cry. You have to stand strong in every situation. So how can they connect with women? We have to teach them how to connect with us. And that comes with nurturing as a child. Right. So, Bunga, what would you say in reference to toxic masculinity and how our fathers should deal with that at a young age?
I would just absolutely agree with what you both are saying, modeling the behavior and really teaching the boys, like you said, modeling the behavior. Like I said, I teach etiquette and social graces to young girls and boys. And there was one year we taught these young boys how it was like chivalry class. We taught them how to use their muscles to help somebody, not to hurt somebody. So, and again, that will be something that's modeled in the house. If the boy grows up looking at his dad punching on mom or disrespecting the mom, verbally or physically or whatever, you can better believe that that boy is going to grow up doing the same exact thing. But if he grows up seeing dad, talking, nicely with mom, no physical abuse going on, that's what he grows up seeing. So obviously he's going to grow up mimicking the same behavior that he saw. Sometimes, you might see somebody who will grow up and do his own thing, forget what he learned in the house, forget what he saw growing up in the house. But that's, but most likely if he grows up seeing what's right, he's going to repeat that same behavior. So role model is, one thing that I really also believe that it can help. And also to teach, now I'm talking about my males in Zimbabwe who grew up in a different culture, different from the Eastern culture, like the American culture and the European culture. We have to continue to teach these men that just because you are a man doesn't make you better than a girl or better than a woman. A woman, like you said, Sodia, earlier, if you are growing up in the house where you are taught that, I heard you saying that you taught your kids, boys and girls, that you have to learn how to do everything. What if you don't get married and you are depending on a woman to cook for you, to do laundry for you, so you have to teach them. So we have to really get into these men's heads that, because you are a man, it doesn't make you any better. And then because you are a girl, doesn't mean that there are things that you cannot do. You can basically do whatever you want to do. I'll tell you a story. My father was a mechanic. I had 3 brothers and we are 8 girls. So I have 7 sisters, including myself. We are 8 girls. But all my brothers, 3 of them, they all became mechanics, auto mechanics. My father had an auto garage. He had a garage. Yeah. So they're all auto mechanics. But my mom, I remember her saying to us, you see what the boys are doing? Just because you're girls, you don't have to say, oh, I cannot, do this. You can be a mechanic as well if you want to be a mechanic. And I can tell you that I have two sisters that really are mechanics. They're not like professional mechanics, but they can change a tire, they can change oil in the car. With me, that was not my thing. I didn't want to get my nails dirty, how my nails are cute. I didn't want to get my nails all greasy. So that was not my thing, but it was my choice. I didn't want to be a mechanic, but our mother taught us that just because you're a girl doesn't mean that you cannot do this. You can still do whatever. We can be engineers, we can be doctors, we can be whatever we want to do. But it's something that we need to be taught, and something that we also need to teach their fathers to tell their girls that they can be anything they want to become when they grow up. So
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Guy, if we stop putting labels on what a male's role as far as emotion and concern is, we will be in a much better place. Now, Mindy, there was a question from the panel, and it says, when we talk about gender-based violence, what support, out in the audience, what support is there for fathers who are dealing with the LGBTQ community, children, and sexual identity issues that go against how the father defines gender, male or female? Mindy, do you want to take that? And I can read that once again. When we talk about gender-based violence, what support is there for fathers who are dealing with the LGBTQ, children, and sexual identity issues that go against how the father defines gender, male or female?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. I mean, I think that it's one of the things that I think for a lot of men in the world, it's really hard for them to acknowledge that they need help, right? And I think that almost is, I'd almost start there before I go into that question further, just to get, to really recognize that it can be really hard for some men to ask for any kind of support, to acknowledge that they are having trouble, whether it's managing anger or whatever it may be, right? And it could be anger that they may have because they may have a child that is defying what they think stereotypical, males and females should behave like, right? So I think there's increasingly amounts of resources out there, but I think that we often it kind of starts with us and our conversations with our friends and our peers to allow people the opportunity to just those to, I think, tolerance, to be exposed to how diversity is actually makes us stronger, right? And that because I think a lot of men are not going to go get those support services, right? But if we can expose them to more and more conversations, opportunities to explore, I think we shouldn't discount how we have a role to play in terms of modeling tolerance, acceptance, that difference is our diversity is our strength, and that we welcome everyone, right? And I think that often is a way to get some resources, to get some conversations started for a lot of men who won't go seek services. We know that they're often not seeking basic health services, right? So how are we going to get them to seek services to support a child that may, identify in a different way that they're not comfortable with? But I'll stop there and hand it over to you, because I'm sure you both have nuggets of gold to add.
Well, I was going to pose the same question to Bongai, because
yes.
I know that there's a vast cultural difference in Africa. So how does that society, the culture there, deal with the LGBTQ, and how are the males handling that?
Okay, it's a loaded question. Let me just respond real quick to what Mandy was just saying about the question. Resources, that's like the most important thing to get educate yourself. Education is power. So sometimes I'll say, if the father on his role, maybe he might not know where to go and get some help. Maybe the child, whether female or male, maybe they might know where they can go with their father so that he can get that education, so that he can get those resources to know how to deal with the situation at hand. And then when I think about the same question in the African culture, Zimbabwe especially, which is where I'm from, I can't speak about other African countries, but it is there just as much as it is here. And again, is here I would say people are a little bit advanced than over there in Zimbabwe. We are still trotting behind, trying to get the information, trying to get educated on how to handle these situations, how to deal with these issues. But again, it comes to education. Educate yourself, get the resources. No, don't just, disown your children, because it happened a lot where the child might come and say, if it's a boy, he might say, I like a boy, or a girl, vice versa. And they will never talk to that child again, or they are disowned from the family. Can you imagine what will go through? What will go through the child's, mind and heart? You are disowned by your own father. But again, I think if we educate the father, give him the education, we can quickly judge them, because again, is something maybe he never heard of that, or maybe he doesn't even know how to deal with that himself. So let's give them the education. Let's make the resources available for them to go and seek out help if they need help. Make them understand what's going on with the child, and maybe they can go for counseling together as a family, as father and children, whether boy or girl. So yes, definitely, I would suggest, make the education available, give the resources to the fathers.
Well, I think that's a huge problem with in a lot of our communities, that people oftentimes may have even the resources, and like I'll go back to what Mindy was saying, that it's up to them to actually go and get that counseling, get that therapy, seek those groups for fathers who have, children of the LGBTQ community, so that they can get that education. I'm actually working with a parent now whose child wants to undergo a gender change, and it's very challenging for both the mother and the father. And the first thing I said, well, that's something you would definitely need to seek therapy as separately and as a family unit, because that is a lot to, contend with as a parent. And, again, I'll go back to the fathers and the father's role, and what we have proclaimed the father's role to be all this while. You are the strength, you are the strength holder of the family, and you can't show the emotion there. You're supposed to, be strict with your boys, and what, now you have a father who has grown up in that era of a boy is a boy, a man is a man, and this is what a man looks like, right? But now, what does a man really look like? What does a woman look like? We're now in this shift in society where people saying that a man can dress like a woman and still be a man, right? You have females who are saying, I can dress as a man and still be identified as a woman. So again, with these labels and these concerns, I think it's crucial that as parents, especially when we go back to the fathers, because they don't look at fathers as being nurturers. They definitely, as well as the mother, need to go into, get the education, be educated, and get the therapy necessary to contend with their child who is of the LGBTQ community. This is the LGBTQ community has the highest rate of suicide when it comes to these issues, from not being accepted by their parents. Right? So that is a huge issue right now in the LGBTQ community. And I just want to thank Alicia Brown for bringing that question forward to us. So
that was a great question. We even had a young girl here in my local community that committed suicide because she was disowned by the father, by the family, actually. So she said, what's the point of living? And then she ended up killing herself. But, that's something that nobody has to go through. No family should be going through that. So the more we talk about it, the more, if you are faced with that situation and you don't know what to do, it's better to seek counseling, seek help before we lose somebody. So.
It's so sad that when you hear of these type of situations of suicide being committed by our youth because they are being ostracized from their family. And crucial when we have a young one trying to identify with themselves and they really don't know, they're grappling with, I'm struggling with how I feel about a boy or girl. Can I go to my dad and talk to my dad? Right?
Yes.
So do we have enough, and I'll pose this question, do we have enough organizations that help our dads, our fathers identify with the children and their sexual preference, just like, and it just goes back to that. And what are we doing? Is there enough organizations out there kind of advocating for our men and their mental health and as fathers and how they have to handle day by day issues? Because mental health with our men, that's a very strong area that I don't believe gets discussed enough. So I would pose that to you. Do you feel like we have enough organizations, ladies, or so Mindy?
I think okay.
Go ahead, Bungai. Go ahead.
Bungai, she has something to say.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to say this before I forget, but I think I'm just speaking again from my local community, from what I see and what I hear. I think there are more resources for the girl, either boy or girl, versus the fathers. Like there's more resources for the person who might be defined as the LGBTQI. They have, more resources where to go. And then the fathers, there might be other resources out there for them, but maybe it might be me who don't know that, we have so many. And then I also think about, we usually get counseling from church. And then that's something that you cannot take to church, because then you are also faced with how can you do that? That's against the church, whatever. And then you'll be like, okay, so where do I go now? So I don't know. I don't know. For me personally, I feel there might be more resources for the person who is going through that versus the fathers. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think there are nearly enough resources for anyone, honestly. I think in particular, women and girls, because of our extreme risk to violence that affects us because we are women and girls, I don't think, we're still a drop in the bucket and in comparison to the need. But I would say it's also, it's not the same, but it is equally as, it's problematic for men, right? It's problematic for fathers. I think it's likely even harder and not harder, but it's hard for them to access support. I think that Bungai, depending on where they live, their one access to counseling or support may be a situation that reinforces those negative stereotypes around what it means to be a man or a woman, and a father or a wife or a husband, for example, and what that has to look like. So I think that that's problematic. I think that we often need to think about how we make services available in a way that's going to make them accessible and likely to be used, in particular by men, right? Because they may not be willing to go seek out a service that seems to be for someone struggling with LGBTQIA issues, right? So I think that we have to be more strategic with how we set up services. It may be around men's health, but providing more and more opportunities to allow fathers to engage in a conversation, to get some exposure, to get some education around these issues. I think that using statistics like you put out there, Shaudia, I think if more fathers knew the likelihood for suicide because of abandonment by a family member, because of how they identify, is something that could hit home with a lot of fathers, right? But I think that isn't even really known about by a lot of fathers. I think we're still dealing with a scenario where, I mean, my son before COVID went to public school in Brooklyn, middle of Brooklyn, New York City, and they were already doing things that were reinforcing what was supposed to be typical behavior for a mom or a dad. They were separating boys and girls in lines at the age of 4. Right. I mean, so like that, there's so much for us to deal with. Right. And so that father of that child, unless they're, enlightened, that's going to re-expose them to those things that they've already been exposed to previously in their life. Right. So we have so much chipping away to do, right? Because the patriarchy is surrounding all of us. Right. And we have to figure out how we can work together to really stop being able to only have spoons to chip away at it, right? But with bigger tools, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I also feel that we need to understand the needs of men and boy survivors, right? We as society, we need to understand their needs, right? Because there are a lot of men and boys who have been subjected to sexual violence, right? And how do we address those needs? How do we identify with them? Because it's a woman's problem. Yes. It's a higher percentage in the women and girls. Yes. But it does happen to our men and our boys. And we have to address and identify with their needs as well, and how we can having more conversations such as this, bringing more males to the round table to actually talk with us as well, so that if they're open to it, we can get inside the mindsets and also understand their emotional rage as to how they're feeling being taken advantage of. And I think once we stop looking at it as just a woman's issue of violence, and we also look at the men too being targets as well, I think that there will be a bridge of connection where we can come to the table and we can have those conversations, because we're understanding of not just us as women, but we're understanding of the males as well. That I oftentimes feel as though we kind of we empower the woman, right? We uplift. There's so many organizations that do that for us, but I don't think that there's enough organizations for our fathers, our men, that uplift them, because the father is often taken out of the picture because there's so many broken homes where there are single mothers. So it's like, just like with Father's Day, you didn't really hear much about Father's Day, but you hear so much about Mother's Day, right? So I feel like we have to uplift our males, our fathers. We have to. And take away the stigma of them not, just only being the strength, supposedly the strength of the family, because the mother is the strength of the family as well. They both hold an equal balance there. There's both, it should be equal, right? We talk about equality. Well, I feel like it should be equal in the home. We're not living in the 1920s anymore. We're not, we have progressed, and women have made a statement. And now I think that the inclusion, it's time for the unity. It's time for the inclusion, the family, the core structure. Let's rebuild that. Let's rebuild and uplift our fathers. Let's hear them. Their mental health matters. There's a question. So ladies, what advice do you give to fathers who feel helpless to protect their children in situations where they do not have side custody and there is a toxic relationship between them and the other parent? That's an awesome question, Ms. Brown. Thank you for that.
I think we should let you kick us off, Shadia.
So, what advice do you give to fathers who feel helpless to protect their children in situations where they do not have sole custody and there is a toxic relationship between them and the other parent? This is an awesome question. I will say to the fathers, because oftentimes the fathers lose custody and sole custody goes to the mother, right? And the mother may not have been the best the choice, because the mother may have very well been the toxic one. So I would say there are agencies that you can Google in reference to fathers having sole custody, or the father's right as a non-custodial parent. I think that there, and I can't tell you verbatim what it is, but if you Google that, fathers who do not have non-custodial rights, the organizations that help them, again, there's not enough of them, but there are some that can help them with that liability, that legal area. I think that they need to get an attorney right away to establish their paternity rights. I will tell you of a situation that I know of where the children are with the mother. The mother has sole custody, and she kind of toddles the children back and forth in a toxic way to manipulate how she gets whatever she needs from the dad. And I don't like that. I don't feel like we should use our children as a way to gain any type of financial anything moving forward. As a mom myself, I was a single parent at one time, a single mom at one time, and I did not use my children to get money. I think that's really disgusting. I feel like sometimes there are a lot of toxic mothers out there as well. There's a lot of toxic femininity. Okay, we don't discuss that enough, but there is toxic femininity as well. And I feel as though fathers need to seek legal advice, legal support. And also there are father groups, there are parent groups for fathers that the fathers can go to. There are some dad groups. There may not be a whole wealth of them, but there are some dad groups which can help to prepare that dad for having time with their child, whether it's with custody or non-custody, but just being in that child's life and seeking that the ground areas there. So, it's one, knowing the resources. And I think that's a big thing with a lot of our fathers who don't have custody of the child. They don't know what resources or what rights they have. So knowing your rights as a parent, because I will tell you, and I've been through this before, no one has custody of the child. You have to establish custody through the courts. So neither the mother nor the father has custody of their child. And I don't believe a lot of people know that. I know that because I went through that. So you, as the parent, have to establish custody. So either the father can go down and establish custody, and the mother can go down and establish custody. So, the father has just as much rights as the mother to do so. And I will go ahead and let you take that part of the question.
Wow. I think the only thing that you said it, I don't think we could have said it any better than that. But the only thing that I will add on to that is, if only people will learn how to be parents, and again, like, not use the children as a weapon to deal with their situations, the husband and wife. I would say the only way that will make the father have a difficult time dealing with the child, if there's some abuse going on from the father, then obviously the mother cannot take the children to the father, or the father cannot go to the children if there is physical abuse, sexual abuse, or any kind of abuse. But in normal cases where there's no abuse, the father and the mother, they need to be able to work together, and again, to know your rights, know where to go, know your resources. I think, Saudia, you said it real well. Mandy, you can also add something.
Mindy?
Well, I wonder if we only have, 7 minutes left, 10 minutes. I wonder if we want to dig into other reflections around this. I think, like, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll pose a question to both of you. Like and it's linked to this last part of the conversation. I mean, I think we do to parent, right? And to inform yourself and to figure out how you can engage in the right kind of conversations with your children, right? Whether it's around consent, intimacy, if we aren't consciously doing that, right, we're not setting up our children to be safe and protected, to know what is safe touch, all of those things, right? So what do you think we could, what in terms of the role of the father in those types of, in that parenting and doing that thoughtful parenting, what's some last advice that we might want to put out to people around this and the role of the father?
That's an awesome question as well. Awesome question. And as you are saying, posing that question, I would say that as we are, whether you are husband and wife, or maybe you are just sharing the home, but you are both parents, if we can trust our men that they are capable of teaching our children, girl or boy, they are capable. Because I know some women that I know personally who, let's say there's a baby and they won't let the men change. Oh, you don't know how to do it. Let me do it. You don't know how to do this. Let me do that. So let's trust them, because they know they are men. They are not boys. So if we give them, unless there's some weird situation where we see that, maybe, but let's try to trust them and just know that they are going to do the best for the child. They're going to, because nobody wants, their children to be worse. Everybody wants the best for their children, whether it's mom or dad. So us as women, let's give our men their place as a father, as a man in the home as well.
That's awesome, Bongai. My last advice for the fathers and just parents, communication is key in the core of the family. And that's something that we're missing a lot of. We miss communication. And I feel like we don't know how, a lot of us do not know how to communicate back and forth with one another in a non-toxic way. And I feel like my advice would be, let's learn how to communicate again. Texting is great, that's great, but texts get lost in translation. And I believe that's a lot of where our toxic relationships are formed, because people are reading the text and they're like, how, what do they mean by that? A mom, a dad talking to the mother, and maybe they're not in the same home, but you still have to parent the child. So let's stop texting and let's start talking, and let's start having positive conversations. And our mindset needs to change on how we look at, the subject matter at hand. Everything should not be an argument. You may have witnessed that as a child growing up, but you don't have to carry those same values. Start creating your own values in your home. I watched my mom be beaten. I was molested. What if I carried the same mindset to my relationships, with my husband now, that I saw him as an abuser, or, I talked to him like he was abusive to me. And let's change our mindset. That goes for the male and the female. We have to learn how to communicate effectively with one another. And we have to start listening to one another. That is core. So having the positive communication, the talks that we need to have, so that our children are witnessing, oh, well, okay, our parents aren't yelling at one another, even if they're not at home with one another. Communicate with one another, talk to one another, and listen to one another. And that's my advice at the close of this. And I would encourage the people on this stage and in the audience to just follow us. And maybe, ladies, you want to place your links in the chat, because I know that there are a couple of people who are wanting to know who we are, what we do, your websites and all of that.
Absolutely. Thank you. It was a great pleasure to be with you, ladies. And I think we should also, I just wanted to keep following you, you two, after this. So please, let's stay. Let me put my website on there too. I can put my link. I think Mandy, I already sent you a request to be for on LinkedIn.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So if you can, let me put my LinkedIn on here. Oops.
Yeah, I am on, and just tell maybe Mindy tell where they can follow you at, and then Bungai, you can go, and then I'll go last. Just let them know,
Okay.
the viewers know.
Yeah, well, I'd love for folks to sign up to learn and stay in the know about voice. So our website is voiceamplified.org, and that'll lead you to all of our social media channels. We're actually hosting a webinar next week on what we've called a 24-hour truce. So what would it be like to have 24 hours where there was no sexual assault?
Awesome.
And what would that mean, and how would that mean? What would that mean for freedom and engagement in the world? So please join us for that. You can find out about that on the website also.
That's okay. Awesome. And my site, generationalsurvivors.com, generationalsurvivors with an S.com, or amazingamazon.com. And I'm also on LinkedIn as Saudia White, and on Facebook. So please, ladies, let's connect. Facebook,
yes, absolutely,
as well as Instagram as the Amazing Amazon. Bungai?
So I am on Facebook as well. I'm on Instagram, and I just put my LinkedIn link on there. My website is www.endchildmarriages.org. You can see a lot of what I do there. I actually have a bingo fundraising events coming up on the 11th of July to raise funds for the girls that I help, that I work with. So I would love to connect with, everybody. I'm on, like I said, I'm on all the social media as Bongai Mloi or End Child Marriages. You will find me there. So
that is amazing. And I just thank you, ladies, for being on the stage with me. It was a pleasure, and I look forward to connecting with one of you and just following you. I have a workshop coming up called The Uncomfortable You Builds a Better You. So please, when I put that out, please, if you know anyone who needs that workshop, please tell them to sign up and register. That information will be on my website, as well as my new comic book, The Amazing on the yes, she's an empowerment superhero. So because ladies,
so we can see all that on your LinkedIn.
So you can see that on my website, www.amazing with the E Amazon.com. Where you can follow the comic book hero and register and get that bully editioning book. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
It was an honor and a privilege to share space with you.
Yes. It was. I didn't even get a chance to share my quick video, but it was a great conversation. I enjoyed every part of it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So Mandy, are you ladies on you're on Facebook, right, Mandy?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I'm going to follow both of you.
Yes.
I'm going to follow both of you on Facebook as well and on LinkedIn.
Great. We'll do the same.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope we stay in touch and talk to you later.
Yes.
Stay well, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a great afternoon.